Giannis scores 50. Chris Paul is a freaking sorcerer. And what the heck happened to the 76ers? It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know about the association, recapping the games from the night before, covering the biggest stories. And on Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm Tony East at TEastNBA, host of the Locked On Pacers podcast, here to talk about a big Giannis Antetokounmpo game, a less big Trae Young game. And how about those Celtics? It was a crazy night in the association, Jake.
You know, it's funny. We were here a week ago, and the NBA is like entirely different for a week later from the NBA trade deadline. You saw some weird stuff tonight, but this was fun. Like, you had some good performances, and, you know, let's start it right there with Giannis, right? 50 points in the win over the Indiana Pacers. It was a 128-119 win. Giannis is just good, but you covered this one. I'll let you handle it here.
Yeah, no one else for the Bucks was like that good. Middleton had 19. That's it. The game was all Giannis, and he just it only took him 21 shots to score 50 points. That's the fourth fewest shots ever for a guy to score that many points. He got to the free throw line. He hit some mid-rangers. He hit 2 threes. He got every offensive rebound, it felt like, for the Bucks. He was unstoppable on drives in this game. And part of it was the Pacers right now. Miles Turner's injured. They just traded away Sabonis. They just traded away Justin Holiday. They just traded away Torrey Craig. They're guarding him with Jalen Smith, whose nickname is Sticks because he's so skinny, and a 6'5" guy named Terry Taylor. So Giannis is obviously amazing. It's his first game back from injury, this ankle thing he's dealing with, and he's being guarded by you and I, basically, Jake. So he just completely dominated. It was there's no such thing as a vintage performance for a 26-year-old, but it's as close to one of those super awesome Giannis MVP level games as we've seen in a while. He was just unbelievable.
Yeah, right. You say he has a 50-point game and they only win by 9, and you kind of tilt your head and you're like, wait a second, something about that seems off. Let me ask you this. Kane Pittman, host of Locked On Bucks, seems somewhat worried about this team. And maybe that's just like the pessimistic host being like, they're not that good. But it does seem like everyone around the league, right, in terms of media, is giving them a little bit of a pass, probably because they just won the title, and Giannis is unbelievable. Having seen him now, I still think they're good. Like, this is a team that gets to the finals and you're not really surprised about it at all. But do you have any concern about them?
A little. Middleton's been playing better recently, but not as good as last year. That's certainly a big factor for them. And Brook Lopez has played in one game. Who knows what his status will be the rest of the season? Who knows how good he'll be when he comes back? Their bench is worse than last year. Their bench against the Pacers was Serge Ibaka, who they just got, Jordan Nwora, Lindell Wigington, who's on a 2-way deal, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce Sandro's last name, the rookie other guy on a 2-way. They have less depth. Grayson Allen got hurt in the middle of the game, and they just have less depth in general. And there are reasons to be concerned. Maybe they get healthy and gel and figure it all out, and Giannis can just score 50 and they can win every game. But they certainly aren't playing as good as last year. They have different personnel that doesn't gel quite the same as last year, and they still could completely figure it out. And I think if you have Giannis, I would bet on them figuring it out. But I get why Kane is thinking like that, especially coming off of a year where he saw what it takes for them to win the title.
Yeah, and look, the East is fairly competitive, and it feels like it's kind of open to a degree too. So while I look at this team, it's like, yeah, they're in the finals, and that's not a big deal, and I'm not shocked by that. If they weren't and someone else beat them because of some of the reasons you just mentioned, the depth issues, I think, is a really big one. And if Giannis, an injury or something like that, this team completely falls apart, it feels like. So there's a bit more of kind of like a balance to what they're trying to do. So moving on around the association, you've got the Dallas Mavericks 107-99 over the Miami Heat. Dallas is like almost a defensive team, I think, to some degree here. They're bringing in some new guys. They integrated them into this one, started to get some production off the bench. But, really, you have Luka with a bit of a quiet night, 21 points, 10 rebounds, just 6 assists, 2 of 7 shooting from deep. And they still go out and like really handle Miami, and it was Maxi Kleba who was really the key for them in this game, guarding basically every position. They had him on Jimmy Butler, and it really slowed him down in this one at times. He finished with 29, but he didn't have the most efficient shooting night. Do you believe this Miami offense, or is this, more just them falling apart than Dallas actually being good in terms of defense?
Yeah, a little of both, which is the boring middle ground answer, right? But Dallas is fifth in defense in the whole league this season in defensive rating, and certainly a late surge. They were under 500 after like November, I think. So they've really figured it out, like you said, more so recently since the start of December. But also, sometimes you have off nights. Like the Heat were 7 of 27 from deep. It's not like they'll shoot that bad forever. And Eric Spoelstra is a flipping genius. Like he'll come up with something. The Heat will be fine. Offensively, Jimmy was poor scoring in this game. Duncan Robinson was 1 for 5 from deep. Gabe Vincent was over 7.
And no Tyler Hero either, right? Like they clearly missed that guy in the scoring punch that he gives them. Absolutely.
So a team with 3, top 25, 30, whatever you want to call that, players in Lowry, Bam, and Jimmy have enough gravity and ability to make, to me, their offense will still be good. But the Mavs are a very good defensive team this season. Jason Kidd has somehow figured out something awesome with them on that end of the floor. And when they get that kind of game from Maxi Kleba, who was plus 13 in his minutes, he was excellent. And they get their new guy, Bertans, to come in. And I saw this tweeted. I don't know this myself, but I believe he scored more points in the first 3 quarters in a Mavs jersey than he scored in his final month with the Washington Wizards. If they can get that kind of performances, the Mavs might be looking pretty good for a little bit.
Look, both of their new acquisitions looked really good in this one. You had Bertans with 12 points off the bench in basically just 13 minutes. And then you had Spencer Dinwiddie, who didn't have it going in terms of scoring, finishing with just 4 points, but he was there to play make. And I think that's kind of what they really looked for with him with that second unit. 5 assists from him on the night. So you're seeing early dividends being paid in that Kristaps Porzingis trade, which at the time that was done, what a depressing trade, and like what a move that makes you kind of sad, but clearly it's working for the Dallas Mavericks right now. So coming up, we have Chris Paul being masterful in the Suns win over the Los Angeles Clippers. And then what the heck happened to the Philadelphia 76ers here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Prize Picks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. It's super simple to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. You're not playing against other people who do this for a living, who have a bank of monitors and algorithms running to find the right things to do. You see the numbers out there, you pick above it or below it. It's really that simple, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Plus, you get to use the award-winning app on both the App Store or Google Play. And Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of: points scored, rebounds, even steals. You can get mixed sports entries in there too. So if you want to bet on the NBA and college hoops, you can do that as well. So for a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our listeners. Our listeners get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point. But you must use promo code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the promo code NBA for $50 free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point. Again, that is promo code NBA over on Prize Picks. All right, thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. And now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. If you want to hear from the people who cover the team daily to give you that context that you can't get in a box score, Locked On Now is a great way to do it. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, moving on to the other games around the association. It's basically Chris Paul and the Suns beating the Los Angeles Clippers 103-96. I'm just blown away every time I watch him play, and he has these nights. I've seen this guy for what feels like 2 decades in the NBA, Tony, and then he just goes out and just throws lobs like crazy in this one.
It's really hard for me to put a limit on how much I'd bet on the Suns in a crunch time game these days. It feels like they win every single one of them. This one was tied with 5 minutes to go. It looked, the Clippers surged back and made it look like they had all the momentum. It crosses the 5-minute mark as a tie game, and they end up winning by 7. They end up losing by 7, because Chris Paul just tore them apart down the stretch. Lob to DeAndre Ayton, lob to Devin Booker, killing mid-range shots, shutting Reggie Jackson down. Reggie Jackson was terrible in the last 5 minutes of this game. It's just what he does. Chris Paul has completely got the Suns in the palm of his hand. He's got the NBA really in the palm of his hand. The Suns team is just unbelievable when the game matters the most.
No, they're so much fun to watch, right? And he's just got the perfect players around him. He finished with 17 points, 14 assists. You mentioned in the fourth quarter, he had a lob to DeAndre Ayton. Then the next possession, a lob to Devin Booker. And then on the 2 possessions after that, he's driving down, and the Clippers defense is so terrified of the lob, they just leave him open to toss up a floater for a mid-range 2 points. And that was basically the game at that point. He was pulling the strings. He was doing everything in this one. And it's just, as you said, they're so fun to watch. This team is so good, and they're improved on last season. Like, credit to the Clippers. As you mentioned, they were down 13 in this one. A couple of times they were down double digits and managed to surge back and get into this one, right? And they don't have any of the name players we're thinking of here. You know, there's still no Kawhi. There's no Paul George. They just traded for Norm Powell, who's hurt and not playing for him now. So they're doing this almost single-handedly because Ty Lue is such a good coach, able to get the most out of his guys. And then they get close with the momentum, and Chris Paul just slams the door on them, essentially.
Yeah, the Clippers are fascinating to me because they are so good at overcoming bad games from key players in their team. I don't know how Ty Lue does it. Like, their starting backcourt in this game, Reggie Jackson and Terrence Mann, were 8 for 32. 32 shots, 16 points for those two guys. And yet all their forwards played well and shot well from 3. They cut down their turnovers. Their bench played pretty well. They were able to get ahead of the best team in the NBA a lot of the time because the Clippers are really good at getting a lot out of whoever's on the floor for them, even without their stars. And I thought for a while that we'd be talking about full credit to the Clippers for a back-to-back with the Warriors and Suns, and they almost win both of them. But, the crunch time Suns, you can't do anything about it. Like, Mikal Bridges hits his first 3 of the game because Chris Paul sets him up with a perfect 3 for the dagger.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
Perfect pass. We talked about the lobs. He himself hit his own shot. The Suns closing 5, it's their starting 5 as well. And they have some, Cam Johnson was in the end of this game too, but that group is just, there's just no weaknesses in it. It's so impressive.
Yeah, for the Suns, Devin Booker, 26 points on the night. He had 3 made threes in this one. DeAndre Ayton, 12 points, 12 rebounds. Like, it's a really good team. Like, there's not much else that needs to be said there. So moving on, you've got the Minnesota Timberwolves over the Charlotte Hornets, 126-120. This was just straight up the Karl Anthony Towns show. 39 points for the big man, 15 rebounds. Got just enough help from this team to kind of keep them going in the right direction. But he was masterful on a night when they weren't really playing the best, and they shot pretty poorly, under 40% from the field, just 24% from 3 in this one. But Towns, he's good.
Yeah, this game was like if you play a podcast on 1.5 speed, that's what this game looked like in basketball terms. 109 shots for Minnesota, 102 shots for Charlotte. Just rapid fire, fast, crazy basketball, which is how these low percentage nights end up in these bonkers scoring numbers. It did go to overtime, but it was a crazy game. Towns was ridiculous, 39 points, like you said. Only took him 26 shots to do it. Got a bunch of free throws, got a bunch of rebounds. And when he's this good, Minnesota typically plays very well. And he masked a pretty poor Anthony Edwards game because he was so good. So this game was just ridiculously fast. Another guy I want to give a shout out to who played well in this game, who just got a contract extension, Mr. Patrick Beverley, who got a 1-year extension in the last couple days. Filled up the stat sheet, 15.7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and he fouled out because it's Patrick Beverley. So it was just a very Timberwolves Hornets game of just speed. These teams run in transition all the time. Their best players are all known for their offense, not their defense, and the final score and the game style reflects that.
Yeah, no, this one was pretty fun, right? And you had the Charlotte Hornets up 13 in the fourth quarter, and just Towns going to do work down the stretch to get this one into overtime almost single-handedly. For the Charlotte Hornets, Miles Bridges with 28 points on the night, Terry Rozier with 25, LaMelo Ball with 22, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and Mason Plumlee with a 14 and 17 game. This was just like an entertaining one, which is one of those, like, as you said, kind of bad basketball games. It's a little bit of a train wreck, but can be kind of fun to watch. One of those really kind of like deep cuts when it comes to League Pass. So coming up next in today's episode of Locked On NBA, what happened what happened to the Philadelphia 76ers in this one as Boston grabs their ninth straight win. So that's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by BetOnline.net. Football might be over, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. And so for the latest odds, totals, player performance props, as well as all of those fun different wagers you can make about where the next fired head coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, and you can get all the Olympic coverage and information you need. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action over at BetOnline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Recapping the night of action before, so you know what went on. You didn't watch all the games. We did. We break it all down here for you, and we got 3 more, including the Boston Celtics just straight up thrashing the Philadelphia 76ers, 135-87. Is this one just one of those like off games where Philly's like, whatever, we're going to get to the All-Star break. We're going to get James Harden and we're going to move on from this. But Boston also looks pretty good. This is their 9th straight win and pretty much a statement victory, I think, for them. In that night, these 9 straight wins, they have a win over the Miami Heat. That's the only other good one. And then 7 wins against like a bunch of at best teams. This one's kind of eye-opening though.
I would say a game where you never trail and win by 51, where Joel Embiid plays. You know, I get that they just made this trade, the Sixers do. They have a worse roster right now. They don't have Seth Curry to play. They don't have Andre Drummond to play. But Joel Embiid did play, and he's still an MVP candidate this season for a reason. They were down
probably
50.
The front runner.
Yeah. Oh, I'd have him top 2. It doesn't matter. They were up 51. The Celtics were at one point in this game. They just completely dominated, and this is such a high level of domination. Like, it doesn't matter who's available for either team, really. They did everything right. They hit a million threes. They hit 25 threes. They barely turned it over. All their stars looked good. Their bench players did everything that they're asked to do. Their defense was good. This was Embiid's first game with less than 25 points in, I think, like 2 months or something. I'd have to look up.
Yeah, since December, actually.
December. Yeah, I think I'd have to look up the exact last game. But they only 2 guys in double figures for Philly. I mean, everything went wrong for them. They shot under 30%, which is unheard of for an entire NBA game. So everything went right for the Celtics. Same time, everything went wrong for the Sixers. And given that the Sixers have James Harden coming very soon, I don't think they're worried at all. But this is more about the Celtics, who, like you said, have won 9 in a row and are very quietly close to home court in the first round in the East.
Yeah, they seem to have righted the ship. And as you mentioned, their stars played well. And all these guys did it in 3 quarters, right? Because no one played in the fourth in this one.
Yeah.
28 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists for Jason Tatum, 4 of 8 shooting from 3, made all of his free throws. Jaylen Brown, 29 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. He made 5 threes, 5 of 7 in this one. You mentioned they got points from Aaron Nesmith off the bench. They just had everything going. Derek White has been really good for them. He's chipped in 11 points. They're playing solid defense. They're on a huge winning streak. And now with a win like this and like completely dominating a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, they're probably kind of getting into that tier of, you're like, oh, they're good. Not like this is a fluke. They're not beating up on the Detroits and some of these other bad teams that they played during the stretch. As I said, it's kind of a statement, one of those like eye-opening wins where you're like, oh, if they finish in a top 4, yeah, maybe that's a team you don't want to have to play in like the second round or something like that.
Yeah, only 1 game behind Philly now in the standings, 1.5 behind the Cavs. They are surging, and it certainly seems sustainable. Tatum's awesome. You know, they figured out how to play under a new coach. They have a new look roster with Derek White, who you mentioned, and I want to bring up because he was plus 41 in one basketball game. That just sounds like a fake number. They completely destroyed the Sixers in his minutes. And it's just funny to see stuff like this. Like, it doesn't really matter, but this game was in Philly. Like, fans were here to watch their team be down 51 in the fourth quarter at times in this game. They know James Harden's on the way. I know no one really is bummed out by this in Philly. Their season is still going pretty well, all things considered. But
yeah,
everything went right night for Boston, and a well-deserved win against a good team. And no one will want to play them when the All-Star break is over.
No, they finally have gotten kind of on track and are what we thought they were going to be at the start of the year. And again, statement win for them. So moving on, two more games. The New Orleans Pelicans losing to the Memphis Grizzlies 121-109. No Ja Morant for the Grizzlies in this one, but they do well without him. This one was as simple as they just came out, surprised New Orleans to the tune of a 37-point first quarter, a ton of ball movement, a ton of assists, and just New Orleans was done after that one. They kind of just packed it in. They managed to kind of keep it somewhat level the rest of the game, but just were never able to recover from that quarter. But CJ McCollum still scoring for New Orleans. He's been a very good pickup in terms of offense. 30 points on the night from him without making a three. Took 25 shots to get there. 7 assists. You see him as that kind of primary playmaker, point guard at times for them. But Grizzlies, talk about a legit team, right? Like, even without Ja, the fact that they can win and do as well as they have this season is terrifying.
Yeah, they look good all the time. Still, for a while it felt like, okay, maybe the Magic will end eventually. Still top 3 in the West, still looking extremely threatening every time they play. And, John Morant's hurt, no problem. We'll just throw Tyus Jones out there to the tune of 27 points and 9 assists. He filled in better than Morant's done sometimes. I mean, not very often, but incredible performance from him. But, you're our Pelicans host. You can attest to this. I mean, can any team in the NBA win only making 4 threes in the modern NBA? The Pelicans could not hit the ocean if they fell out of a boat in this game. They missed basically every three they took, 4 for 26. That's kind of the whole game story to me. Like, a lot happened in between that led to them shooting 4 for 26, but if you only make 4, you're just not going to win.
No, it's a mix of the no, you're not gonna win very many NBA games when you shoot single digits from three. 15% from the Pelicans, which is almost like a made up number. It's like it's hard to do that, right? They're not a good 3-point shooting team. They've been bad at this all year long. They brought CJ McCollum in to try and help them with that. And then you get a team that's just active, right? And has athletes like the Memphis Grizzlies who were harassing the Pelicans out there on the perimeter and forcing them to take some bad shots. And so it's kind of combination of both. I haven't seen a good 3-point shooting game from the Pelicans since like early 2022, sometime in early January. So that's why they brought CJ McCollum in and really went all in on a guy that can at least get you buckets, and he's doing that. And it's nice to have another guy here that can score, even if his 3-point shot isn't falling. But it's also like the most New Orleans Pelicans thing that you bring in CJ McCollum and all of a sudden he can't make a 3, going 0 for 5 in this one. So it's like something in the water and a little bit Kandir. But they're starting to still figure some things out. They're at least not winless anymore when it comes to the CJ McCollum era, if you can call it that, here in New Orleans. So one final game on the night, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks getting a much needed win, 124-116. Trae Young's kind of good, Tony.
Yeah, I love these games. Like, these two young point guards who are both just absolute killers this season, going head to head. They're always such a blast. And Trae gets the upper hand at home in this one, 41-9 for him. Dominant performance. He just has some of these games where his three's falling and he's getting to the line, where he looks like maybe one of the best offensive players in all of basketball. His defense certainly is what it is. But when he can do both, hit his threes and get to the line, there's almost no way of stopping him, as the Cavs found out the hard way in this one.
Yeah, look, and they needed this win. They've been disappointing this year. They're coming off of 2 straight losses going into this one. They have one more game before the All-Star break against the Orlando Magic. So they've built up, I think, some goodwill with their fans again, and we'll see if they actually just kind of toss it away potentially too. Also, season high for Danilo Gallinari, 25 points from him. You had DeAndre Hunter with 18 in this one. And as you mentioned, the Cavaliers feel like they need the All-Star. I think this is like a team that's achieved a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot of bit. I think this season they're probably looking to just kind of limp to, as I think a lot of teams are at this time of year, just get to the All-Star break, get 9 days off, come back feeling ready to kind of finish out the final third of the season strong.
Yeah, certainly. And, they just got Karis LeVert. They'll have more time to integrate him in the time off. And the All-Star break is in Cleveland too, so their whole team can still have some fun, do some bonding, and get some practice work in. I think that has a tiny bit of value. I don't know why I always think about that kind of stuff for these teams, but yeah, Garland was excellent. He's been dealing with some back stuff, but see him play and have 30 and 8 is always fun. And Evan Mobley was good as always. Those two guys have been special every night. And outside of Kevin Love, really no one else shined for them in this game. But while we're talking Cavs, can we talk about the big news of the NBA day today? Jared Allen will be the final NBA All-Star named to the All-Star game as a replacement for the injured James Harden. Well-deserved for him. He's having a wonderful season. It was basically between him and Siakam. To me, I mean, maybe there's another guy you'd like to throw in there. But well-deserved for Jared Allen. He's had a wonderful season, and 6 for 8 in this game, 14 points. They obviously didn't get the win, and they would have liked to, but well-deserved All-Star for a guy that has had a good season.
Yeah, no, he was the 100% right choice. I think I would have been fine with Siakam. It was definitely between those. He's averaging 16.2 points per game on the season, 11.1 rebounds. He's given you 1.3 blocks. He's been just good, right? Like shooting 67% from there. It's nice to see him kind of get that and to see this whole team, right, who's really overachieved. Cleveland's been fun this year. They've been really good this year too, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So to see him kind of getting that recognition and getting into the All-Star game, I think is the right thing.
I agree, but you know what? Trae Young is better. When that happens and him having 41 ends up defining this game.
Yeah, of course, right? It's sometimes just kind of how it goes. So there you go. 7 games in the NBA last night. We watched them. You didn't. We got you covered on everything. And that's where we can wrap up today's episode of Locked On NBA. So thank you all for listening. Now for your second listen, go check out the Locked On Bets podcast, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available pretty much everywhere. As always, on Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers at TEastNBA. You can find me on Twitter every day, active talking about the NBA.
All right. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back with you all next week.